Your choice reveals a recurring pattern that may be shaping your life more quietly than you realize. What draws you in is rarely random. In a Jungian test like this, the image that reaches you first often touches something older than logic, something that has been waiting inside you for recognition. Jung's test is never just about taste. It is about resonance. It is about the strange way the psyche leans toward the symbol that mirrors a wound, a need, a defense, or a forgotten part of the self. Sometimes what attracts you is not what you want to become, but what in you still lives in another time, still protecting itself, still repeating a hidden story. That is why this matters. A simple choice can reveal a pattern of attachment, avoidance, longing, or emotional loyalty that has stayed active beneath the surface for much longer than you think. So do not overthink it now. Just look at the 5 photographs and choose one from 1 to 5 as quickly as you can. Stay with your first impression. Do not analyze it. Do not compare them too much, and do not try to choose the most beautiful one. The unconscious often speaks before the mind begins to explain. The image that pulls you first may say more about your inner world than the one that seems most reasonable. Trust that first movement. It may feel small, but it is not small. It is a signal. And by the end of this video, I am going to connect your choice to something concrete and practical, a step you can actually take in your real life, because insight means very little if it does not change the way you move through the world. But the full meaning of your choice will only become clear at the end, when the pattern behind it is finally seen as a whole. Before we go further, pause the video and leave your name in the comments, because this test begins to matter when you let it become personal, when you stop watching from a distance and allow the symbol to meet your real life. If you chose option 1, this usually happens when a part of you is still emotionally sitting in a place that life has already left behind. Stay with me, because this image is not only about loneliness, it is about waiting. It is about the strange loyalty of the psyche to what once mattered deeply, even when it is no longer alive in the same form. The abandoned room, the empty chair, the narrow light in the distance, all of it speaks the language of Jungian symbolism. In Jung's test, a room often represents the inner world, the hidden chamber of memory, the place where the conscious self and the shadow quietly meet. And when the room is dim, neglected, and still, it often points to an archetype that learned to survive by holding on, not by fighting, not by running, by remaining, by keeping the door inwardly open, just in case something or someone returns. Pay attention to this, because this matters more than it seems. Your choice may reveal that you carry the archetype of the one who waited, the one who stayed emotionally available to an absence, to an unanswered question, to a love that changed shape, or to a version of yourself that never got to finish its story. The light in that photograph is important. It is small, but it is there. That is how this pattern works. The shadow says, keep waiting, because leaving means losing the meaning of what happened. The light says, you can remember without remaining trapped inside the memory. That is the tension. That is the secret conflict. And you may know it in ordinary life more than you admit. Maybe you tell yourself you have moved on, yet you still return to old messages, old photos, old scenes in your mind. Maybe you compare new connections to one unfinished bond. Maybe you delay a decision because some hidden part of you still hopes for clarity from a chapter that has already ended. Here is the deeper pattern. When a person has been shaped by silence, distance, or emotional uncertainty, they often become inwardly faithful to what never fully arrived. They become guardians of the unresolved. And that loyalty can look noble from the outside, but exhausting on the inside. Still, do not judge yourself for this. There is a gift here. People who choose this image are often deeply sensitive, perceptive, and able to feel what others ignore. They notice atmosphere. They remember nuance. They love with endurance. But the shadow of that gift is staying too long in psychic winter, calling it devotion. Stay with me a little longer. This does not mean you are broken. It means some part of you still believes that letting go is betrayal. It is not betrayal, it is integration. It is the moment when memory stops being a room you live in and becomes a chapter you carry with dignity. Today, choose one physical object, message thread or saved reminder that keeps an old emotional door open, and remove it completely before the day ends. Do not announce it. Do not dramatize it. Just do it quietly, with full awareness, and say to yourself, I can honor what was without abandoning what is possible now. If you choose option 2, this message usually appears when one part of you longs for peace, while another part does not trust it. The storm over the sea is not only an image of chaos, it is an image of expectation. The sky is already bracing, the water is already answering, and somewhere inside you there is a pattern that says, calm never lasts. In Jungian language, this is often what happens when the shadow is not only made of anger or fear, but of vigilance. You may look composed on the outside, sensible, capable, even strong, yet your deeper instinct keeps scanning the horizon for the next strike. That is the conflict. Desire says, rest, soften, receive. Let something good stay. Fear says, prepare, tighten, do not lean back, because the moment you do, life will change its face. Stay with this image. Lightning is sudden, but the body that expects lightning lives in tension long before it appears. That is why this choice often belongs to the archetype of the survivor, the one who learned to adapt fast, read moods quickly, and feel safer in movement than in stillness. This does not mean something is wrong with you. It means your psyche may have learned that peace is fragile, and that love, success, or relief can vanish without warning. The shadow then does something clever. It turns alertness into identity. It whispers that if you keep anticipating the worst, you will stay protected. But there is a cost. When peace finally arrives, you may not enter it. You may test it, interrupt it, or stand at the edge of it like someone waiting for thunder. Think of an ordinary scene. Your phone is silent for a while. Nothing bad is happening. A friend has not answered yet. Your partner seems distant for a few hours, or a message from work has not come in. The room is quiet, but your mind is not. Instead of resting, you begin building explanations. Maybe something is wrong. Maybe they are upset. Maybe you forgot something. Maybe the calm itself is the warning. Pay attention here, because this is where the pattern reveals itself. The sea is not dangerous in every moment, but you relate to it as if danger is always forming. Sometimes you even feel more like yourself in stress than in ease, because struggle is familiar, and familiarity can feel like truth. Here is the hidden drama. The part of you that wants a softer life may already be awake, but the older part still believes softness leads to exposure. Jung would say that what remains unconscious returns as a pattern, and in this case, the pattern is not only fear of chaos, it is attachment to tension as proof of control. Yet the light inside this image is just as real as the storm. Lightning reveals the whole horizon for a second. It shows you what is there. And perhaps this choice is showing you that your strength is real, but it does not need constant danger to exist. You are allowed to keep your intuition without worshipping alarm. You are allowed to be alert without living on the edge of impact. Today, set a timer for 15 minutes, put your phone out of reach, sit in one place and do one quiet task slowly, whether it is drinking tea, folding clothes, or writing by hand, and each time your mind tries to predict a problem, gently say, nothing is attacking me in this moment. That small act matters more than it seems, because it teaches your body that stillness is not the same as helplessness, and that peace does not have to be earned through another storm. If you could choose 3, it is often because something in you is tired of looking strong while quietly asking to be held. This image does not pull people who feel nothing. It pulls people who learned very early to carry tenderness in secret. A child holding a doll in the middle of the woods is not only about innocence, it is about a schema that formed long ago, a silent arrangement inside the psyche that says, I will stay gentle, but I will not fully show how much I need. Jung would say the persona grows to protect us, and sometimes that persona becomes so capable, so calm, so responsible, that even the person wearing it forgets how much fear and longing still live underneath. Stay with me here, because this is where the story becomes personal. You may be the one others describe as mature, dependable, emotionally deep. You may be the one who says, it is fine, I can handle it, even when a quieter part of you feels unseen. That is the avoidance hidden in this choice. It is not dramatic avoidance, it is subtle. It is the habit of postponing the truth of what you feel until the right moment, the safer moment, the cleaner moment, and that moment rarely comes. So the old need remains tucked inside, like that doll in small arms, protected but never fully healed. Here's an unexpected twist. The deepest wound in this pattern is not weakness. It is self-abandonment dressed as composure. You may notice it at work. When you agree to deadlines you already know will drain you, because disappointing others feels more dangerous than disappointing yourself. You may notice it in relationships, when you wait for the other person to guess what you need instead of speaking it plainly. You may notice it in daily life, when you make promises to yourself and then quietly break them, not because you are lazy, but because an older part of you still expects your own needs to come last. Pay attention to this, because choice 3 often appears when the heart wants closeness, but the nervous system has learned caution. The child in the image feels warmth, but the forest around her is still uncertain. That is the emotional logic. You want comfort, but you do not fully trust the world to hold it. So the persona says, stay useful, stay nice, stay contained. The shadow says, I am hurt, that no one sees how hard this is. And the unlived truth says something simpler. I do not need rescue, I need honesty. See what happens next. Once this pattern is seen, the old story starts to loosen. The gift in you is real. People who choose this image are often deeply compassionate, intuitive, and sincere. They sense what others feel before it is spoken. They can create warmth in cold rooms. But the shadow of that gift is carrying everyone while secretly wishing someone would finally notice the weight. This is why your next step must be concrete, not symbolic. Today, choose one commitment you have been delaying, name it out loud, set a clear time to complete it, and finish it before the day ends without negotiating with your mood. Then keep one more promise that serves only you, even if it is small, because every fulfilled promise tells the hidden child inside you that your life is no longer being run by avoidance, and your future does not have to be organized around the persona that once kept you safe. If you chose 4, this usually happens when a part of you is trying to hold everything together because it is afraid that surrender will cost too much. This choice carries tension. It is the tension between control and release, between keeping your hands tight around what remains and facing the possibility that what is fading may already be gone. In Jungian language, this image often belongs to a person whose shadow is not loud on the surface, but heavy underneath. For Jung, the shadow is not only anger or desire. Sometimes it is the silent fear of change, the hidden belief that if you loosen your grip, you will lose love, meaning, identity, or even your place in the story of your own life. So you stay inwardly braced. You keep revisiting what ended. You keep guarding what cannot return in the same form. And you may call that loyalty, when in truth, part of it is fear. Stay with this, because the symbolism here is strong. A grave under moonlight is not just about grief. It is about the limit that life imposes and the resistance the psyche feels before accepting it. The cross, the flower, the stillness, all of it points to something sacred that has also become fixed. This is where the conflict begins. One side of you wants to honor what mattered. Another side knows you have been standing in the same inner place for too long. You do this more often than you let yourself admit. You may tell yourself you are simply remembering, but often you are also postponing movement. You may tell yourself that you are being faithful, yet part of you is afraid that healing will look like betrayal. That is the deeper pattern. A chapter ended, a person changed, a dream collapsed, a version of you disappeared, and instead of letting the loss become part of your history, some part of you made it into a private altar. Pay attention to this. The psyche can become devoted to pain because pain feels like proof that something was real. If the pain softens, the shadow whispers that the bond will disappear with it. But that is not true. What is real does not need endless suffering to remain meaningful. Think of a simple scene from everyday life. You still keep a conversation in your phone that you no longer read for comfort but cannot delete. You still compare every new connection to one person who is no longer part of your life. You still organize your decisions around an old wound, an old rejection, an old role without naming it directly. People around you may think you have moved on because your persona looks composed and functional, but inside there is a quiet refusal to say a full goodbye, and that refusal has limits. It keeps your world orderly but narrow. It protects the memory, but restricts the future. Here is the light inside this image. People who choose 4 often love deeply. They remember with sincerity. They carry reverence. They do not treat emotional experience as disposable. That is a gift, but every gift casts a shadow, and the shadow here is becoming so identified with what was lost that you stop meeting what is still possible. You recognize yourself in this more than you usually say out loud. That recognition matters because it is the beginning of freedom. Not freedom from memory, but freedom from living inside it. Today, choose one thing you have kept emotionally undecided and answer it with a complete yes or a complete no before the day ends. Yes, I am ready to stop feeding this memory with my daily energy. Or no, I am not ready yet. And I will stop pretending that I am. Either answer is stronger than drifting, because the moment you speak clearly, the shadow loses some of its power, and your life begins to move from preservation toward truth. If you chose 5, this usually happens when your inner life is no longer willing to remain arranged around an old order that has already become too small for you. This is the choice of movement, of pressure, of a quiet rebellion that has been gathering force beneath the surface for longer than you realize. On the outside, this image may seem calm, beautiful, even distant, but the real message inside it is not passivity. It is transformation. It is the moment when the psyche begins to understand that peace is not always found by returning to what was familiar, but by crossing into what is true. Stay with this, because this is where the meaning deepens. In simple Jungian language, this points toward individuation, which is just another way of saying that a person begins to gather the scattered parts of the self and live from a deeper center. Not the center built by fear, not the center built by pleasing others, not the center built by old habits, but the one built by courage and integration. That process is beautiful, but it is not soft in the beginning. It often starts when something in you can no longer pretend. The old persona starts to crack. The old excuses lose their magic. The old rhythm that once protected you begins to feel like a prison with good lighting. Pay attention to this. People who choose 5 are often standing at the edge of an inner threshold. They already know something must change, but part of them keeps delaying the first move because the first real move changes the story. Once you act, you cannot keep telling yourself that you are still only thinking about it. That is why this image carries both longing and force. It is not only about the beauty of the horizon, it is about the demand hidden inside the beauty. Life is asking you to step forward, and some part of you already knows it. You may see this pattern in ordinary moments more clearly than you expect. Maybe there is a conversation you keep postponing because you know honesty will rearrange the relationship. Maybe there is a decision about work, routine, health, or direction that you keep circling without making because uncertainty feels safer than irreversible truth. Maybe you promise yourself that next week you will begin, next month you will speak, soon you will change the habit that is draining you, and yet the cycle repeats. Not because you are weak, but because the shadow always prefers a familiar pain over an unknown expansion. That is one of its oldest tricks. It whispers that staying the same is wisdom, when often it is only fear wearing a thoughtful face. But here is the inner highlight in this choice. The fact that you were drawn to this image may mean that your deeper self is already stronger than the resistance. Something in you wants alignment more than delay. Something in you is tired of rehearsing a life instead of entering it. That matters. Do not reduce that impulse. Do not talk over it. Jung would remind us that wholeness does not arrive by accident. It asks for participation. It asks for one act that tells the unconscious, I am ready to stop orbiting and start becoming. Today, make one small but irreversible move toward the life you keep saying you want. Send the message. Cancel the false option. Remove the number you know keeps you stuck. Sign up for the thing you keep postponing. Throw out the object that belongs to an old version of you. Choose one act that cannot be undone by evening and complete it before the day ends. Let it be small, but let it be real. Because once movement becomes visible, the old structure begins to lose authority, and your future stops being a fantasy and starts becoming a path you are actually walking. What all 5 choices reveal is not 5 separate stories, but one deeper human pattern, wearing different symbolic clothes. One person waits inside an empty room, another braces for the storm, another protects a younger self, another clings to what was lost, and another stands at the edge of change. Different images, same movement underneath. Avoidance takes different forms. Repetition takes different forms. Hidden fear takes different forms. But the psyche is often doing one essential thing in all of them. It is trying to protect something unfinished. In simple Jungian language, that is why symbols matter. The image you chose was not random decoration. It was a mirror. It reflected the place where your inner world still holds tension between what happened then and what is possible now. Jung believed that what remains unconscious does not disappear. It returns as mood, pattern, attraction, hesitation, attachment, and recurring choices. That is why this was never only about a photograph. It was about the emotional meaning your mind recognized before your logic could explain it. Stay with this, because this is the turning point. If you saw yourself in one of these patterns, that is not failure. That is progress. Recognition is not a sentence. It is the first form of freedom. The shadow begins to lose its control the moment you stop mistaking it for your identity. The old repetition begins to weaken the moment you see that it is a repetition and not your destiny. And the fear that stayed hidden for so long begins to soften when it is brought into language, into light, into conscious choice. This is the quiet accomplishment inside a Jungian test. You are no longer standing outside your own pattern pretending not to see it. You have named it. You have felt it. You have allowed the symbol to become personal. That matters more than people realize, because inner change rarely begins with force. It begins with honesty. It begins with the simple moment when a person says, "This has been living in me, and I am ready to meet it differently." That is where integration begins. Not in perfection, not in sudden transformation, but in the choice to stop dividing yourself into acceptable parts and hidden parts. The room, the storm, the child, the grave, the horizon, all of them were showing one truth. A part of you wants to move forward, but it wants to move forward with truth, not with denial. And that is a new beginning, not because the past vanishes, but because it no longer has to govern you from the dark. Today, name the pattern that felt most true for you. Say out loud what it has been protecting, and take one visible action that proves you are no longer living only in reaction to it. Make it real. Make it small if needed, but make it concrete. Because the real test begins after this video, and it begins in the ordinary moments when you choose awareness instead of autopilot, truth instead of performance, and movement instead of the familiar circle you have walked for too long. If something in this test reached you, do not leave it here like a thought that fades the moment the video ends. Make it real. Give it a place in the world outside your mind. Please indicate your chosen number in the comments. Please type your name. That small gesture matters more than it seems, because the moment you write it, you stop hiding behind distance and begin meeting yourself honestly. Maybe your choice revealed a fear you have carried quietly. Maybe it showed you a pattern you repeat without noticing. Maybe it reminded you that a part of you is still waiting, still guarding, still hoping, or finally ready to change. Whatever you saw, let it become conscious now, not someday, not later, not when life is calmer. Right now, let this be the moment you stop watching your own life from the outside, like this. Subscribe, and stay close to this path, because these symbols are not here to impress you. They are here to wake something up in you. If this spoke to your heart, let that response become visible. Leave your number, leave your name. Let me know which image chose you and what it stirred in you most deeply. There is power in being seen, but there is also power in choosing to be seen. That is why this ending matters. It is not the end of a video. It is the beginning of a more honest conversation with yourself. Keep going. Do not close this feeling too quickly. Do not return to distraction before you take one real step toward what you just understood. Watch the next test on your screen right now. There is a reason you are here, and there may be another layer of your story waiting just one click away. Follow that thread while it is still alive inside you, and let this moment become more than insight. Let it become movement.